you're holding this hearing. I've worked to address inefficiencies in defense acquisitions and sustainment, and I understand how pervasive waste is within the Department of Defense and how big this problem is. So thank you for your attention to this issue. Mr. Schwartz, in your testimony, you emphasized the need to decrease barriers for small businesses to participate in the defense market. I agree with that position, and I'm very concerned that the department has grown so reliant on a shrinking number of commercial firms, which stifles competition and leads to increased costs. What would you say is the biggest reason for the decrease in small businesses contracting with the DoD?
Thank you for that question. In the polls that I have seen, in the surveys that I have seen, the industrial base generally is saying it's the rules and regulations. Now, in my testimony, I said fewer regulations, but I agree with my colleague from POGO, more consistently enforced. It is not about just getting rid of regulations, but we have a problem in the defense industrial base. From FY10 to FY20, the small businesses decreased by 43%. That is not my data. That is the government's data. It's not just small businesses. Other businesses, every other business, fell annually by 7.3%. That's an even higher percentage. Now, you can say that was only till 2020. It's happened every year since then. Last year, entire government contracting dropped by 2.2%, companies working with the government. So it is the regulations, it is the bureaucracy, and is not regulations just for regulations' sake. When I was at the 809 panel, we found regulations that required vending machines to accept dollar coins. We found regulations that required printers to print on two sides. We found contract clauses that required seatbelts to be put in the contract to wear seatbelts while driving on base, even though every state had that law already. It is that volume of work and that churn of regulation that small businesses cannot keep up with and know what the rules are. It's the cybersecurity regulations, and I'm not saying we don't need cybersecurity regulations, but when ONCD, the Office of National Cyber, says that our regulations are causing companies to shift money to compliance from actual cyber defense, that is a problem. And I think that is a lot of the driving force.
Yeah, we have too many bureaucrats in the department writing picayune rules. So what steps can we take legislatively to increase small businesses' participation in defense contracting?
So I'm going to make a couple of suggestions, and there are a number of them, and I would love to have this conversation at length. But one is what I mentioned in testimony, SCIFs, secure compartmentalized facilities. Small businesses don't necessarily have the resources to create their own SCIFs. So outside of the Washington area, to the extent that there could be like a WeWorks model for SCIFs, that could be very helpful to allow companies to view, bid on, and then actually execute work that might be classified. Is one. Another one is, I think the point you were making, I hope I understood that, is simplify the regulations so small businesses can simply understand what is required of us and not have to spend a lot of money on lawyers or other people to explain to them what is required, what is not, and not have to change their IT systems all the time. Things like that.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you're giving us some of the barriers that face small businesses in competing for sustainment contracts. I would like to follow up with you on getting more information on what those barriers are and making sure that we look at that in terms of anything we can do legislatively. I have a constituent that maintains that DoD should leverage FAA certificates and commercial best practices to increase the number and types of businesses that can compete for contracts and lower sustainment costs for certain aircraft. That makes a lot of sense, and I think we need to look at more ideas like that to increase small business participation and achieve the best outcomes for our service members and the taxpayers. We need more people competing for these contracts and doing the work. And my experience as a former small business owner is that often the small business owner will be better at doing this than the larger company, although I think the prejudice among DoD is to go to the larger companies, and we need to look at that and make sure that the way contracts are written, the way people are assessing companies is fair to all concerned. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you much. As far as the future, we're going to go to Mr. Lynch, we're going to go to Mr. Perry, and then we're going to go across the street for a field trip.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses for your willingness to help the committee with its work. Just a little background. I come out of the construction industry.